Hello and welcome to another episode of Design Talk. Once again, the only podcast where we talk about the last episode of Design Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm Dan.
And we are talking about, belatedly, the Volume 7 of Good Design, Bad Design.
Yeah, we didn't mean to wait this long on this one.
But we totally did.
And our memory is fuzzy.
And to make up for it, we're doing nothing. We're just doing the same thing. But here we are. So, Good Design, Bad Design. It's it's our longest running series. 2 segments of it were added because of basically a half-hearted joke we made. Well, not half-hearted. The Monster Hunter segments were alluded to in Volume 5, and we had been putting them off because we didn't want to shortchange a segment on that.
So, yeah, Monster Hunter has honestly been a thing that has haunted me for this.
It's complicated.
It's complicated to talk about. There's a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot of things you can easily overlook with all the games. There's a lot of different angles I could come at this with, but
I think we both landed on the conclusion after throwing it around for a while that you needed to both talk about the improvements the series has made over time and how there's still a whole lot of work to do.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of issues with it. Like, Monster Hunter is a difficult game to understand, and I think a large part of that is just how it presents its UI and its mechanics. It doesn't really tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, like Monster Hunter World is the first one that I jumped into at all. I had no history with the series at all.
Yeah, for me, I played a bit of Tri on the Wii, and then I also played 3 Ultimate, which is like an expanded version of Tri on the Wii U. I didn't really want to play the handheld games because that just wasn't super appealing to me, and I had other stuff going on anyway.
Yeah, but I could talk from a perspective of someone coming into the series totally new, and I've got a bunch of friends that bought the game at the same time. We did a lot of hunts together, and a lot of them had a lot more experience than I did, and I was constantly running into the why on earth is that like this? Why does this take so long? Why is this so obscure? And the reply was always, oh, it was so much worse before.
Yeah, it was so much worse before, and at the same time, like, while like some of the design is definitely flawed, some of it is also in service of like what that game is. You can't totally like strip away some of the more complicated mechanics of Monster Hunter.
Of the charm is like actually figuring out what it's like a Souls game. Like it's obtuse on purpose.
Yeah, you will get a lot of fans who actually dislike the quality of life changes.
Yeah, the first few weeks are let's figure out what, probably less than a few weeks, but let's figure out how all these mechanics actually work so we can do these hunts better. Or it's like raid bosses in MMOs too. It's like figuring out the puzzle is a lot of the fun.
Or things like figuring out like, how do I unlock these extra features? How do I upgrade like stuff like the canteen? How do I get more ingredients in there for better upgrades? How do I get access to just more convenient options like I keep forgetting what the actual name of the thing is, but basically like the cultivation box, like the ancient tree where you can basically grow crops and resources
I have no idea.
Between hunts. Yeah, you didn't even get that far into the game.
I only got like maybe 10 or 20 hours into it, and then I was like, I'm good.
Huh.
So...
Yeah, I've gotten pretty far in it. I'm waiting on Iceborne. I played the original on... I played the vanilla game on PS4 and then moved over to PC when that came in, and I'm waiting on Iceborne, which apparently fixes pretty much every issue. I actually like looked around for a little while to figure out if there were any major changes, and I kept getting a lot of responses being like, oh, it didn't change that much, but after we put out the video... There was like 3 things that got completely improved and no one talked about it. Like, for example, like the wish list. Like, in the base game, you only have like 6 wish list slots for like the items that you actually want to craft and keep track of them.
Way more slots afterwards.
Yeah, they give you like 9 pages or something.
Yeah, that was one of most of the comments, like, probably partially because the thumbnail was drawing in Monster Hunter fans. It was mostly Monster Hunter related comments, and a lot of them were like, hey, they fixed this in Iceborne.
Or here's this workaround.
Yeah.
And while there are workarounds with a lot of these issues, that doesn't change the fact that there are a lot of issues in the UI itself, because like some of those workarounds I didn't discover until like 70 hours into those games.
Yeah. There's an underlying thread on some of those comments that are like, oh, they fixed it, therefore it's not something worth complaining about. But the other angle you could take is you can only learn. It's a lot easier to learn from mistakes than it is to learn from like something that's all the way there already.
It's easy to overlook what makes something work.
Yeah. So it's not a slight on the game, but as a learning tool, it's definitely worth it to look back at the things that they fixed and why they fixed them.
Yeah. I also tried going back to 3 Ultimate when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with Monster Hunter World. I actually thought about like including 3 Ultimate as the bad design segment, but that would require a lot of extra work and a lot of extra time that we didn't really have, like both on the video itself and both just with the research.
Yeah. Are
but
we
like,
even set up to record footage with that? Is that
it's a
possible?
Wii U. Yeah.
You've got that? Okay.
yeah, no problem.
Okay.
But like if it was the handheld games, that'd be more of an issue.
Yeah, that's
like I don't have we don't have
We could
3DS
just
capture gear or anything.
handheld camera, record stuff.
No.
Everyone would love it.
Sure. But no.
So yeah, good design, the design of Monster Hunter is such a mixed bag, and it's such an important game that we decided to do
Yeah,
one segment of both on it.
Yeah, as I was saying, like I tried going back to one of the older games and just like managing your inventory, just your basic items and crafting all that stuff. Hell, like the monster materials, those take up your immediate like item slots, like when you're out in the field. Mm-hmm. They got rid of that in World, and holy crap, I don't think I can go back.
Yeah.
I will say I did not expect to actually do a good design segment for the Monster Hunter World segment.
Really? Because
initially, like you actually came to me and proposed, like we kind of discussed it, and eventually I came to the conclusion like maybe we should appreciate.
Yeah, I mean everyone talks about how much stuff they fixed, so it makes sense to talk about it from an improvement perspective.
Yeah, but I never thought that I was going to make a good design segment on it.
It just also seemed to me like just setting yourself up for toxic comments and stuff if you were like, hey, this sucks. This popular thing, it sucks. See ya.
It's like, or even, I like this popular thing. Here's some issues.
Yeah.
And
if you just, I don't know, our comments are generally pretty positive, so, and I think some of that is we don't just sort of dunk on things for no reason.
I mean, we do occasionally, but
I mean, you could just see like people talking about, hey, you totally overlooked all these things they improved. So I'm glad we did the sort of dual segments on that one.
Yep.
So we also did a segment on the first one that came together on this episode was the Sayonara Wild Hearts segment. That was such an obvious layup of a segment to talk about. It's visually stunning. It is interesting to talk about. It's new, which helps a lot.
Yeah, I was a little bit hesitant about it because it did it was overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up just kind of like thinking about that and then like approaching that, okay, what do they do right to make it so that the overwhelming aspect of the game.
Yeah, the angle was not obvious at all, but having the game in the series or in this episode is like, well, we got to find something to use this episode for. Like, this looks too good to pass up. And then the idea of, hey, let's simplify the gameplay so you can free up your sort of attention to look around at all this crazy stuff happening all over the place.
Yeah. In fact, like, we kind of decided on that game, like, very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, that game just came out.
Yeah, you handed that to me as, like, Mike, play it. And then I was like, eh. And then I finally got around to it. It's like, oh, one sitting, played through the whole thing. It's like, yeah, we need to talk about this.
Yeah, and, like, we've already talked about very similar games, very comparable games. Like,
yeah.
It feels like a fusion of a lot of those games.
And it just looks so, it's kind of striking that it's putting some kind of, like, attention, putting more attention on something that is as good as that game.
Yeah,
feels deserved.
Yeah, it's only an hour, but it's one hell of an hour.
It's a great hour.
It's
a Journey-esque great hour or two.
There's a reason why it's in my cohesive style leaderboard.
Yeah.
That I was waiting.
That some people didn't get the joke of the lower half, but oh well.
Yeah. And also, two of those are games that we have not covered, and I don't know if we will cover them because there might not be enough to talk about, but we want to
Who knows?
give them our due a little bit.
Okay, so then we talked about Rayman 1 also, which I have a lot of experience playing the first handful of levels of Rayman.
Same.
They're very fun. Allegro Presto is a great level. Just zero traction platformer is actually kind of a fun idea.
I mean, it's essentially just an ice level.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's like, I don't know, it's my favorite ice level, and the music's real good.
Yep.
So...
Yeah, Rayman is probably like one of the first platformers that I even remember. Like, it was one of the earliest ones.
And it looks great. It has aged really well visually. So...
Yep. That game is bullshit.
Yeah, don't hide your stuff behind nothing.
So yeah, I just kind of came to the realization while watching a AGDQ segment on it, just a speed run, and like, wow, you know what? I keep forgetting. Like, I know this game is hard, but also, man, just all the collectibles that you have
nonsense.
To get.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff.
And just it's random.
I mean, they fixed the sort of total lack of signifiers that the game had in their releases. So they knew that was sort of the biggest problem of the game, especially in a structure where you can't beat the thing unless you get every hidden bit. So anyway, so that's about as much about Rayman as I can think of. Then we talked about, what else do we have here? Celeste. Celeste is good.
Yeah, that one.
It came together kind of late.
Yeah, that one was a bit later. Like, I just started like kind of just appreciating like how that game just kind of silently teaches you.
Yeah.
And just kind of thought that fit in quite well. Like,
that thing is real dense for a platformer.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of mechanics that it throws at you, like just rapid fire, and it expects you to pick it up fast, and it does a pretty good job of that by not like, you know, overwhelming you or anything. Mm-hmm. It gives you the level design does a lot to force you to learn exactly how these mechanics work.
Yeah, and it does well, and I like that cinematic, that cutaway. I actually like the editing you did for the and then cut away and just let the game kind of do its own tutorialization.
I mean, that's mostly just the game.
Yeah, it's fine. So, but that's nice.
Yeah, and also the presentation of that thing is very sharp. I really like the pixel art is very simple. The background's very simple, but I also like the general presentation. We couldn't really talk about it, but I like the clean typography and the like hand-drawn character art and portraits. Mm-hmm. There's actually, they do a pretty good job of having like one of the villains like literally like break through the dialogue boxes at a few points, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, just that kind of diegetic stuff where you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, and like the villain is basically all the bad thoughts that the main character has, like the negative side. And like it's essentially, the whole game's essentially about dealing with anxiety and stuff like that, and like little mental disorders like that. But so
anyway, Celeste is great. Go get Celeste.
Yeah.
And then the final segment we had was something that you had your eyes on.
The JoJo.
Yep.
Is the Joey JoJo.
I've watched 5 minutes of one episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Did I show you like one entire episode of part 2?
Maybe you did.
So,
not a lot of JoJo's.
But you've heard a lot of JoJo's from me.
Well, from you and like osmosed through the Castle Super Beast podcast. So they talk about that constantly.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of JoJo's, and I've wanted to do Eyes of Heaven for a while because that game is not very good.
Yeah.
But
especially visually.
Well,
I mean, it looks like the thing, but the UI is,
in terms of interface and just like I'm kind of mixed on it because like the menus look nice, it's true to the style.
Yep.
But it's also a case of style kind of getting in the way.
Yeah. It also, the style doesn't lend itself necessarily super well to a game. Like, it kind of has to shoehorn in some things.
That game is incomprehensible for non-fans. And
For example, me. When I went and looked at what you were doing with JoJo, because we were talking about maybe doing a JoJo segment on, I think, volume 5 or 6.
5 or 6. I've definitely had my eyes on it for a while. At least 5.
And I saw the thing, and I saw the scrolling move list on the side of the page. I was like, that's ridiculous. What is this? That's unacceptable.
Yeah, I've also thought about it like for the too many fonts segment, but it was like maybe not quiet enough, or
yeah,
not, it wasn't as obvious.
We had better too many fonts options for that one, so that didn't make the cut for that. And it's bad enough that it deserves its own dedicated segment.
Yeah, it's so weird because there are things it does well with that presentation, but once again, it also takes it too far. It's like some people do not like Persona 5 because the style like
overwhelms.
It's overwhelming and like, it's messy. It's messy in some ways, and there's a very fine line that that Persona's developers had to walk. And it can be really easy to mess that whole thing up and overwhelm players. And Eyes of Heaven is definitely an example of that, on top of also just like throwing you into the thick of like the source material.
It's not a turn-based game, so you got to deal with it right now.
Yeah. And like the whole game just feels very clunky, and a lot of its mechanics rely on you knowing the source material.
Yeah.
Like,
which if you don't, it's impossible to know.
Like there are stage hazards, like in the train station stage, where the stand user that is associated with that area has the power to essentially aid you, and basically the way that manifests in the game is that like there will be like a little comic panel in the corner that will show up of the character, and then suddenly he will be an NPC walking around, and there's like a weird aura around him. There's this weird red aura that represents the aging power.
Yeah, they had to. That's kind of one of the shoehorned in things where it's like you can't really convey a character aging in a game.
Yeah, so what ends up happening is that I'm fighting, and then all of a sudden I'm just like walking, like I'm just slowing down, and there's like a weird red like vignetting effect, like a misty red vignetting effect.
Yeah,
and I'm like, wait, what the hell is happening? I don't understand this.
Yeah,
and then like I turn around, and it's like NPC. It's like, oh, it's him probably, because I guess that's the aging effect.
Yeah.
But it's just not obvious.
Yeah, JoJo is a very difficult series to adapt to other media formats.
Especially an action one. I think either an elaborate adventure game, a puzzle game, or like some kind of RPG would probably work better.
Yeah, than just a straight up action. But I mean, it feels like it should be like a straight up action game because of how the series goes, but
how parts of the series goes. It's very much a game about like about wits. It's about using your power to the fullest of your ability. And other anime games are better gateways into their own series, like Naruto, like Clash of Ninja, or the Ultimate Ninja Storm games, or
like most of the DBZ, the modern DBZ fighting games.
Yeah, you don't have to be a fan of Dragon Ball to like
get something out of it.
To have fun with stuff like Fighters or Budokai.
Yeah, but if you're immediately lost without knowing what the series is about, then that's not conducive to a good intro experience.
And oh boy, does that naming convention for all the moves not help at all.
Yeah, that's very confusing. So,
could you imagine a Simpsons game where it's just like
just
the most
quotes.
Just the deepest cut quotes.
Yeah, it's all just mash up.
No, not just Simpsons.
Yeah.
It's like badly translated like German Simpsons or something.
I would, as a huge Simpsons fan, I would totally be up for that, and I would recommend it to no one. All right, so those are all the segments. The episode itself did extremely well.
Yeah, this has been the most successful episode of Design Doc that we've ever put out so far.
Turns out just talk about JoJo's and Monster Hunter and you're golden.
We definitely had to go back and forth about the thumbnail for this, like trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that so since our style is kind of like white on clear for the thumbnails, like getting the Rathalos icon to look right took like a half dozen attempts at it.
And not half dozen times, like 2 or 3.
I think you sent me a half dozen of those. Like,
well, in progress.
Yeah, but then we were like, oh, this thing.
There's
isn't
like
going
2
right.
major approaches. But
Yeah, it was like, oh, this needs shading, which might look weird in our style, but it definitely needs it. Oh, let's do an outline. Oh, let's figure it out. What else do we need? And then adding the
we ended up going for a grayscale version of the Rathalos icon,
Yeah.
which coincidentally is a silver Rathalos.
Yeah,
as some people pointed out. That was not intentional. That was
into.
just by accident.
Yeah, and then adding the goes on above it to sort of round out the thumbnail was a last minute addition too.
So a lot of those goes were actually taken from a very old episode of Design Doc back in like 27.
Oh, you reused the goes from Fantasy Anime Julia Child?
Yep.
Yeah. Everyone, go watch
Battle Chef Brigade.
the Battle Chef Brigade episode. Because 1, Battle Chef Brigade's, it's fine. It's okay.
It's all right.
2, the episode that we did is real good. And 3, there's Fantasy Anime Julia Child with goes. Anyway, go watch it.
Menacing.
That is, I think, our least popular episode.
But we like it.
But we like it.
Hence our least popular. It's really unpopular.
Golf RPGs and Battle Chef Brigade.
I think. Did that improve at all? I don't know.
Probably not. I don't think it has. I don't think Battle Chef Brigade is on the mind. Is it not in the zeitgeist?
I don't know. Game Pants.
Well, I mean, that also didn't do well. I'm real good at writing scripts that don't go very far, which takes us to what our next episode is going to be, or rather, 2 episodes.
Do you want to go into a little bit more detail about this?
So I think we're gonna do an adventure game episode, and I think we're gonna split it up into 2 because one episode does not do justice to to basically 35 years of adventure game history, something like that.
Yeah. And for a little bit extra clarity, this is from the original idea of dead genres.
Yeah, so this is directly coming from Patreon ideas. The dead genres thing, one of the things I had in mind when I was adding that poll option, which did the best in that poll on Patreon, was to talk about adventure games and why they died. And then looking into it, the script was kind of slow to come together. And just recently, like, we've decided, hey, this first half of it is pretty long for an episode, and we feel like we're speeding through it. So we're gonna split it up into a early adventure game arc and a later adventure game arc, classic and modern. And hopefully you'll see that in a couple weeks.
So, yeah.
That'll do it for us today. Thanks to our patrons.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya.